Good day, and welcome back to Public Eye with me, Ryan Bramley. This is part two of my interview with Tia Spanos and Terry Bowditch, two good friends of mine who are currently based in Melbourne, Australia. And in this episode, we focus more on the comparative mindsets between Australia and Europe in terms of dealing with COVID-19. We also look forward to the future and see what a life might be like in Australia post-COVID. And in terms of moving forward then, I mean, you're in a, if I'm right in saying, correct me if I'm wrong, it was a 6-week period of this phase 4.
Yeah.
And you're a couple of weeks into that now?
Yeah.
Sadly, just a couple of weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not rubbing it in at all, I promise. But so do you... And again, you know, this may age well or badly, depending, of course, what's going on. But as you say, you know, the information and data coming through at the moment, it doesn't sound conclusive in terms of whether you guys are getting to a point where you could comfortably come out of lockdown after these 6 weeks or not. What's both of your kind of gut feeling on, you know, where we move from here, or certainly where you move from here over in Melbourne and in Victoria?
My feeling just from the numbers, you know.
Terry's prediction.
So our numbers, I only really look at the new cases. To be honest, there's a plethora of numbers and it's hard to get your head around some of them. But we look at the new cases each day, and that's kind of plateauing, which is good. So
that's our 11 a.m. bulletin from the Premier every day.
Dan Andrews comes in our TV every day at 11:30 and does his bit. And the numbers are kind of stabilised, but these are new cases. So obviously for every new case, there can be multitudes of other cases. But the numbers appear to be stabilising. But I'd be surprised if these restrictions weren't sort of extended longer than, you know, another month than we are now. And even if they were lifted, I think we'd be sort of in stage, you know, still have restrictions for quite a fair bit longer. Like, we don't see ourselves, or I certainly don't see, so I'm a public servant. I work for the Victorian government, and I don't see myself going back into the office in town for the rest of the year, basically. I expect to be working from home for the rest of the year, and you're probably in the same boat.
Yeah, so I'm a civil servant too, but I'm not for the state government, for the Australian government. So we have, I mean, the idea in each state is you adhere to the state and territory restrictions and jurisdictions, like the laws that they put out, requirements on people. We're adhering to that as well. Originally, I think our intention, what we thought, was that we'd be back in like June, July. And then, as you know, things kind of got worse and now we're in stage 4. So my prediction personally is that I wouldn't be surprised if stage 4 went till the end of September. So it's meant to go till the 13th. I think it could go to the end of September, and then we move into stage 3 for at least a month or 6 weeks. So taking us into mid-November. And that would be like stage 3 for us was, there were some places where you could have a limited number of people in a venue. Like most places were still takeaway, hospitality wise. Retail was open, but everyone could only have limited numbers in the store. Like it was 4 people per square meter. Is that right?
No, it was 1 person.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
1 person per 4, whatever, square meters. I don't know.
Something like that.
Maths. That was a circle.
I saw that bit.
So yeah, it's really restricted. But I assume that we'll go back to that. But for me as well, I think, I don't know if the state government would be inclined to request people go back to work, particularly city workers like ourselves, till maybe the new year. That's kind of the vibe, the sense of things that we have here as workers, and we don't know anything, you know, in particular, any secret information. That's just kind of the sense you get. Most, like, people we know who are in private, like organizations in business, they have said that their companies have told them like they're not going back till next year. And that's obviously like a company decision. Some companies have decided, hey, we're going to just trial permanent working from home. They've already made decisions, which I'm sure is the same in the UK. So obviously for us, our work is primarily office based. So we're kind of excited to see any potential reforms or changes it brings to the way civil servants work, because there is a lot of advocacy around increased flexibility, workplace flexibility at the moment. And this has proven that we've been super productive while at home. And I certainly don't want to be a person who's at home all the time. I like having the commute maybe not every day, but most days, because I'm out and about and I'm in the mix and I like that. But yeah, I certainly see a lot of changes. And until I think organisations bed that down, as well as obviously flattening the curve and the number of cases, I'm struggling to see, and again, particularly like as we get towards the end of the year, it's not really a time of festivity this year, probably. But people will probably want to take holidays once things loosen up, because we'll be going into summer and we'll have Christmas as well. And it wouldn't make sense, I don't think, for organisations to go back at the end of the year. So yeah, probably next year. So the whole year was a write-off, basically.
Hit the reset button, 2020 never happened kind of thing.
I was so optimistic about 2020. I was like, right, 2019's been a bit average. Like the global political spectrum's been a bit weird, and there's some not so great stuff going on. 2020, I'm hitting 30. It's going to be great. New future, bold new future. And that statement probably went too much the other way, of like a surrealist, dystopic, bold new future.
It's been weird.
Yeah, I never thought I'd have to live through a pandemic. I didn't realise they were like 100-year things.
We had massive bushfires at the start of the year as well. So.
Yeah.
That's almost been, again, I don't know for you guys, but, that made massive global news. We were, I think, the world's eyes were on Australia in a way like never before, certainly not in my living memory. And that doesn't even feel like it was the same year as this anymore for us. Is it still kind of, at the forefront of your minds in Australia, or?
Kind of. Not forefront.
Yeah, no, it slipped a bit because, everything else has taken over. But some people have really taken a pounding in certain areas. The bushfires where they've been burnt out, and then COVID, and now we've had a lot of flooding
along the south coast
in those areas as well.
So those areas are just saying this whole year, whether you see it 2019, 20, or just the last 12 months, has just been the worst thing. And it's like, okay, we've had our 3 things now. I don't know if you believe in those kind of superstitions, but these 3 bad, ill-fated things have happened now. Like, let's just have a clean slate, because they're really struggling. Like there's a lot of unemployment. People lost their homes, lost family members, and there's still a lot of things going on. Like there's the Royal Commission into the bushfires, the handling of the bushfires response. So that's happening. There's still a lot of recovery efforts happening, but a lot of that's, it's not taking a back seat, but it's slowed down because of social distancing, and there's only so much that we can do while we're trying to, I guess, maintain the COVID restrictions, etc. So people can't travel. People plan to travel to those regional areas that were affected by the bushfires to show support to the local towns, because they are thriving. It was all coastal primarily. So, although there were some inland areas, but people go there for their summer holidays. And we thought, well, we can do it now. We can do it like now the bushfires are over and it's safer. And then COVID started literally at that same time in February, March. And so we couldn't do that either. So these towns have had like no one visit them, and they're really dependent on that seasonal trade.
Yeah. So sadly, it has sort of slipped from memory a little bit. It shouldn't, but it kind of has.
And I guess
the other, right? It's like, okay, I want to support this thing and I want to give money here to these people. Like, for example, a lot of people were really upset when the public commission towers were closed for a week. Most of them were for 5 days, because there was a spread of cases and they were worried that would proliferate. So they shut the commission towers, and none of those people were allowed to leave their homes. So people were sending food and doing whatever they could to the front door, sending it to the front doors, and then the emergency services were sending that food upwards and supplies through the towers, which was great. But 4-5 months ago, that's exactly what we were doing for the bushfire victims. So that support's kind of been transplanted, because you're only, as well, because other people, like, you're just going through a hard time yourselves. A lot of people have at least someone in their family who's lost a business, lost their job. Thankfully, we have good government support for like wage subsidies at the moment to keep people employed. But you're too focused on the kind of what's happening now in your immediate surroundings. And you forget that, hang on, a few months ago I was supporting these people over here who are also suffering, and they're still suffering. So yeah, I think people feel a bit stretched.
Yeah, it's I mean, talk about compounding issues, to have that, then that, and that, and it building up, and I think certainly one of the things that was coming out at kind of this neck of the woods as far as the bushfires was concerned is that the handling of them, and again, not to draw in too much into the kind of politics of it, but the handling could have been better, and hence the Royal Commission. And I guess we're almost going through a similar thing now with COVID, in that there is apparently going to be an independent inquiry. Whether that's a hearing style thing where people can actually give testimonies or not, I'm not sure yet. But I do wonder, actually, I wonder what you think to this, that, because it seems from this end, looking outside in at what's going on and how severe the lockdown is. I mean, for example, there hasn't been a curfew thing over here. That hasn't, even when we were deep in the lockdown, the curfew wasn't a thing. The fines are much more light here. I mean, don't get me wrong, if you were slapped with £100 fine, and you were really struggling, that'd be pretty difficult. But how much are the fines again for you guys at the moment?
So it depends what it's for. So if you're out and about without a valid reason, there's only 4 reasons to be out, like caregiving, for example, buying groceries. You pay, it's about $1,700. So kind of just halve that almost to get the quid amount. It's $5,000 if you're out if you're out in curfew. And then it's $20,000 for an individual if you're out for work without a valid work permit or work or like permit accepted occupation. I don't know the specific terms, but yeah, so 20K. So it's a lot of money, and most people don't have that money at all, which the purpose of that is really to hinder people from doing anything stupid and going out. So, people have, for a long time, have said, it's quite a nanny state here. But those kind of things exist for a reason, and it's to maintain that kind of social order, which for us, like, we understand why it's happening, and most people do as well. Like, there is overwhelming support for stage 4 restrictions, and for the measures that they have in place based on polls and things they've been doing recently. But you can see from people's adherence to it that there is that support. So we've actually been quite surprised seeing, like, the flip side, and we were talking about this earlier. We feel it's really lax over in Europe, not just the UK, but Europe. So we see people going on their summer holidays. No one's wearing a mask anywhere. People are going to the beach, like crowded beaches, eating at restaurants like nothing happened. It feels as though, like, one of our beautiful European summer trips, it feels like we're watching that play out on TV when we see footage from Europe. And the UK as well, like seeing Soho in London when that day opened. we all just thought everyone is so stupid. Why are you doing that? So I think our mindset, I don't know if it's when we're afraid of the virus. I'm not sure what exactly it is, but we're a lot more conscious of, you know, even if we don't get really sick from it, we could pass it on to someone and be the cause of death for someone. And that thought just freaks everyone out. And people are like, no, just get rid of it. And then we can just go back to being ourselves. So it's, in a way, it's kind of like that New Zealand mindset as well, I would think.
Here, at least, well, not everyone, but most people are happy to take the short-term pain if it means this, we're going to get over this thing quicker. I think that's generally the sentiment. I mean, that won't last forever, of course, like sort of breaking points. But at the moment, people are like, good, let's just try and smash this thing. Then we can get back to hopefully life as usual.
And I wonder whether the kind of, because of the timing of what happened with the bushfires and then this coming straight after, whether that, I mean, again, I wonder whether that might have played into, you know, the response in terms of, you know, the lockdown and the kind of government and state enforced response to it, but also, as you say, in terms of your adherence to it as well, and the fact that you see those scenes that are going on over here and think, wow, that's, you know, that, like you say, that's crazy. And yet, if you actually look at the number of cases that are coming out from Victoria compared to the cases that are coming out from here, there's not, I know we're talking about completely different spaces, but, you know, it's not as if you're having way, way, way more cases than we've been having. Do you know what I mean? Certainly in those kind of really built up areas, you know, per 100,000 people.
Those our case numbers, relatively speaking, like our peak was 725 in a day was the highest number.
And that's cases, isn't it? Not deaths. That's cases.
So our total deaths,
new cases.
Yeah, new cases. So our total deaths in the whole of Australia, I think, have just gone over 300. So, and I know it's like over 30,000, or it's even maybe 40,000 now in the UK. So we're freaking out because 300 people have died, and that's too many. So for us to see 40,000 have died in a given country, like, let's not even talk about the US, and to see, that it looks like a relaxed kind of laissez-faire, like, oh, you know, it is what it is. And we're like, no one should die, no one should get sick, and which is, again, which feeds into the high compliance of people here. And it's unfortunate because you can see where there hasn't been compliance, that's where you've seen the numbers grow. And there's been particular areas where there was a really interesting article actually in the papers yesterday that talked about just the disadvantage index. And so they looked at different council areas of Melbourne and they looked at their socioeconomic status basically. And you could see that the areas that were more disadvantaged, like four of the top 5 highest COVID number, like case areas, were the most disadvantaged council areas of the city. Whereas the higher socioeconomic areas have barely any cases. So there is this really huge northwest versus southeast divide where the southeast has remained relatively untouched. It's not to say there's no cases, but it's very low compared with the northwest. And you see these people, like, they had to go do manual jobs. If they didn't turn up to work, they wouldn't get, like, they'd be axed. They didn't have paid leave. They couldn't access paid pandemic leave, which is something that has been won here. The unions have been fighting for it for a while, and they finally achieved that. They reached an agreement with the federal government, which is fantastic. So now people who don't have any leave can access that if they're sick. So they don't feel like, if I don't go to work, my kids can't eat, or I can't pay rent, or whatever. So there's been these things that have happened that you would only kind of, I guess, be conscious of once they had happened. So I guess saying everyone, these are the restrictions, that's that, follow it. There are going to be people who breach those rules because they feel they have no other choice. So things like paid pandemic leave have come out of that, where it's like, no, you will still get paid. Stay home. protect other people, and like we'll make sure that you have enough money to do what you need to do, like to get by. So you've definitely seen that kind of like an iterative response. Like it's certainly grown, changed as we've gone on.
It's so interesting to hear these comparisons. And speaking of comparisons, I've just brought the cases up. So, this is obviously at the time of writing or time of speaking in this case, but the amount of cases in the UK at the moment, well, you tell you what, we'll start off with Australia. The amount of cases in Australia, confirmed cases, is 22,127 with 352 deaths. So that's gone up by 18, I'm guessing, over the last 24 hours or the last time that they were checked. And the majority of those deaths, as you say, are in Victoria as well. And by the sounds of it, are in those, more kind of financially and, socially disadvantaged areas. If you compare that with the UK at the moment, again, at the same time, 313,000 cases confirmed. So that's 313,000 compared to 22,000. And the death figures are pretty shocking too. You've had 352 deaths, which, as you say, is 352 too many, you would argue. We've had 46,526.
That's why we find it weird to see people on the beaches and
going to Spain, going to Mallorca, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I know the UK might have sort of past its peak and all that kind of stuff, but it's still, it's still out there. But
yeah, so and that's the argument. Like, unless you eliminate it, you always risk another peak, another wave. Which is why I think a lot of the population would prefer to eliminate rather than to, what are we calling it? Containment at the moment? Contain it, so low numbers that we can trace. And obviously that's up to governments to decide what they do. But yeah, if you could eliminate it, again, I guess you've got the issue of Australians love to travel, and we're kind of we'll travel around Australia, but we tend to like to go overseas. And so as soon as you open the borders, internationally, that's a whole other ballgame, so again, you're exposed. So I don't see how life can go back to normal until the whole world kind of eliminates it. So from that sense, I can see why Europeans have that mindset, or some, of, if we catch it, we catch it. And that herd immunity concept, like, I can understand where that's coming from, because it's going to be so hard to eliminate. But similarly, I guess from our perspective, and you've seen that in New Zealand as well. It's like, let's just get rid of it so we can just keep doing our thing and being, Australians are known to be like kind of carefree people. We like to have a good time and enjoy life and that kind of thing. So we can't really do that until we don't have to worry about this virus. So we'd rather forget about it. We'd rather make sure it's gone, so we can do what we want to do.